Hello, Andrew Myrams here from Intuitive Finance. When buying a property, a vendor needs to make certain disclosures. In every state, it's a little bit different, but in Victoria, one thing that every contractor sale must have is a Section 32 statement. So what's generally included in this? Well, it should be a copy of the actual title to that land. It should show any encumbrances, mortgages or caveats or anything like that on it. It should have any statutory declarations, rates, any outstandings. If it's a unit, it'll have a body corporate statement and things like that people have to know. There'll be things like building permits issued in the last 7 years. These must be disclosed so you know if there's been a pergola or something added to the property, it's got to have had the appropriate approval from council, and it's got to be then within those rules that council would approve. And of course, if there's been any owner builders or things like that doing extensions or renovations, they too must be disclosed. People have to know in Victoria what they're buying and what's been approved and what hasn't been approved. Because if people go and build or add on or do amendments to their property without approval, it could be compromising that property, building over things like easements or power or plumbing or stormwater drainage through the land. So you have to be very careful with what you've bought and what you've built over. Things like that all need to be disclosed. And then there's things like access to roads. Are there laneways? Is there any other land behind or surrounding that might not be on the title but is used by that property? It's really interesting if there's laneways in some of the older parts of Melbourne. These can sometimes be acquired by a certain owner if they make the right application. If it's not on title, you can obviously get some more land. That's going to have a significant value or increase to your value of your property. And finally, if there's any notices that are outstanding against that property, so unpaid rates or anything like that, that also must be disclosed. And all this information is available by councils or all the local amenities and government departments. So that's the types of things that will be disclosed in a Section 32. But who does it? How do I get it? And where do I get access to it? So who will prepare it? It'll be the vendor solicitor that will prepare this. It's a range of statements and they have to apply by applications to councils and people like that to make sure all the statutory obligations are in order. When you're buying a property, it must be made available to you, because in that is going to have a major impact on whether you choose to buy or not buy that property based on some of the information that's going to be in there. And of course, there's going to be lots of information in there. The Section 32 statement can be quite detailed. It can be a lot of pages. It could be massive in the case of a building with apartments and things like that. They have enormous rules and regulations around their body corporate and how you operate and how you need to operate. Are there pets allowed and things like that? So there's a lot of information in these. But what should you look for when you go in? I think there's a few key points. You should always go and look for a copy of the title. Who are the registered owners? Is it subject to a mortgage or a caveat or any other encumbrances that might be listed on there? And are there any other things on that title that might make you look and go, that doesn't seem right? Next, you should be looking at the outgoings. What does it cost you to maintain this property? What are the council rates? Does it have access to power, to plumbing, to septic, to phones and things like that? And if so, if they're available, is there costs to do that? All of this must be disclosed. Of course, depending where you're buying, you should be looking at the zoning of that property. Is it subject to, and when you've driven down the street, you will have seen if there's development around, is it subject to development? Has it got a mixed use? Is it in a busy thoroughfare? These are all things that can both enhance but also be detrimental to a property's value based on the zoning and what that property can be used for. The next thing I think you should look for is the council valuation. And where that will be is in the rates notice, where they have an applied value. That dictates what you think, what the rates are payable on that property, and it'll have a land value and a capital improved value. Have a look at that. It could give you an insight into the intrinsic value of the property, and this could help your buying decision. And finally, but not least important, just check of any building permits or approvals that have been done. Look around when you inspect the property, you'll be able to see if it looks like any additions have been made in the last 7 years. Just make sure that they've been council approved, applied for and certified as being livable at the end. Very important, because if someone's put an add-on to their property and haven't got the approval, they could come and ask you to either pull it down, apply for that approval and pay the fees to do so. There can be fines and penalties involved, of course, too. And as the old saying goes, caveat emptor, or let the buyer beware. You may not have been at fault, but it's still at your obligation once it's found to rectify if you haven't done the right things up front. So they're all the things you should be looking for in a Section 32, a vitally important document here in Victoria in terms of disclosures, both getting it out when you're selling a property and making sure you know what you're getting when you're buying a property. I hope that helps. Of course, if we can always help you with anything in relation to that, or refer you to a range of people that we would recommend, either preparing or selling a property and then buying a property, we'd love to do so.